morning. This is Environmental Intelligence, episode 55 for July 9th, 2026. Here's what's changed recently in the environmental regulatory landscape. Alberta-Ontario pipeline proposal triggers fresh scrutiny on Indigenous consultation and economic viability for eastbound crude projects. Two pipeline proposals advance in Alberta and Ontario with direct implications for environmental assessment and consultation obligations. BC moves forward with 3 new Indigenous-led conservation areas that may intersect future site assessments. Practitioners should monitor how these developments affect linear infrastructure permitting and land use constraints this quarter. If you only note one thing today for your compliance calendar, review Indigenous engagement records for any east-west crude projects currently in planning, with ongoing deadlines and no fixed comment window. A new proposal to construct a pipeline carrying Alberta crude to Ontario has drawn support from northeastern Ontario municipalities, but faces immediate pushback on costs, project need, and lack of prior engagement with the Anishinaabe Nation. The announcement caught the nation by surprise, raising questions about how future linear projects will satisfy consultation expectations under provincial and federal processes. Oil industry analysts note significant economic barriers that could affect project viability and associated environmental studies. Consultants working on similar corridors should verify whether existing Phase 1 and Phase 2 work scopes adequately address consultation gaps before submission. Next steps include tracking any formal regulatory filings that may trigger updated environmental assessment requirements. BC has announced 3 new Indigenous-led conservation areas intended to function as wildlife refugia. The designations may impose additional constraints on future contaminated site investigations and remediation access within or adjacent to these zones. No specific timelines for implementation were provided. Multiple proposals seek to increase Alberta crude export capacity both east and west, with explicit recognition that higher production volumes will increase greenhouse gas emissions. Environmental professionals involved in project applications should prepare for heightened emissions accounting and climate-related conditions in approvals. Review pipeline corridor proposals for implications on current environmental assessment scopes in Alberta and Ontario. Update consultation tracking templates to capture early engagement gaps identified in recent announcements. Brief clients on BC conservation area designations affecting land access for site investigations. Monitor further filings on east-west crude export projects for new assessment requirements. Track any formal regulatory filings on the Alberta-Ontario pipeline proposal for updated consultation or assessment triggers. Review BC conservation area boundary details once released for overlap with active client sites. Monitor federal and provincial responses to increased pipeline-related emissions accounting expectations. There's a nuance here worth understanding on early-stage corridor work. A client submits a desktop review for a proposed 300 kilometers corridor and assumes standard environmental baseline work will suffice. Yet the route crosses both a recently designated conservation area and multiple First Nations territories, with active consultation protocols. The science of corridor selection now requires simultaneous evaluation of ecological sensitivity layers, traditional land use data, and regulatory triggers under both provincial land use plans and federal impact assessment pathways. Experienced assessors recognize that conservation designations often carry implicit buffers that affect soil and groundwater sampling grids long before formal permitting begins. They also note that Indigenous knowledge inputs frequently identify seasonal constraints or culturally sensitive features missed by standard ecological surveys. The most common mistake is treating consultation as a sequential step after technical fieldwork, rather than an integrated input that can alter sampling locations and risk assessment endpoints from the outset. The fix is to map all known conservation and consultation layers in the initial constraints analysis and adjust the work plan before mobilizing field crews. Tomorrow, watch for any formal regulatory filings on the Alberta-Ontario pipeline proposal that could update consultation or assessment triggers. That's environmental intelligence for today. If this briefing is useful to your practice, share it with a colleague and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back with the next briefing. Have a productive day, and if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at NARA Network. Links in the show notes. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Models and Agents for Beginners, Artificial Intelligence Explained Simply for Beginners and Curious Teens. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. Want the written briefing with source links? Each show keeps a summaries page on naranetwork.com. Scannable, dated, and free. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.